How are the Minnesota Vikings going to beat the Tennessee Titans? This is going to be their third consecutive game against the AFC South, and so far the Minnesota Vikings this season are 3-0 against the division. The Titans are a weird team. On paper, they look like they should be pretty good, but in practicality, they aren't. But how can they beat them? They also have a really weird defense in where they're great yardage-wise and bad with points. How does that manifest? What's the context behind that? Plus, J.J. McCarthy had another knee procedure. We're going to talk about all that and more here on the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, is producer Dave, who has the wrong screen up again. I'm going to give you
shit.
So much for this,
giving
Dave.
Me crap. All right, hold on.
Sorry, Darren. Your crap is gone. It is now going directly to producer Dave. He has earned all of it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to have some fun. I think we need to start off the show
like
with
Sam
something.
Darnold last weekend. Not quite on the top of my game.
We need to start off with something that came about earlier today when it was announced that J.J. McCarthy had another knee procedure on that surgically repaired right knee. Now, this is really important to really dial in and get context. So Kevin Seifert of ESPN first broke the news about 1 o'clock, right before Kevin O'Connell was going to go talk to the media. He does a weekly press conference every Wednesday. Sometimes news will break right before then. If you remember when J.J. McCarthy, initially had that knee surgery, Tom Pelissero and Adam Schefter broke the news about 3 minutes prior to Kevin O'Connell coming out. So it's not crazy that like there was news right before he spoke. That's relatively normal. That's kind of how some of this stuff works. 2, it was broken initially that McCarthy had knee surgery for a second time. Now, this is a key word here because it was also debunked that he didn't have surgery. And now I think he had surgery. So let's kind of walk through all the details. So Kevin Seifert says that he had a second surgery on his knee. Okay. This is around 1 o'clock. And the details were that he had a biological injection, which is probably platinum-rich plasma, something like that. Some maybe stem cells. We're not going to get political, but like we're just going to kind of tell you from a scientific basis. And injections like that are meant to help boost blood flow and increase the healing process. Okay, so that injection, you do not need surgery. But the whole point of Kevin Seifert's reporting was that there was excess swelling in the knee. All right. Second part, Ben Gessling, as a lot of the beat writers do, they will tweet out that they have sources that confirm somebody else's report. It's a common journalistic practice. So he reports that there was no surgery, that there was just an injection. Okay. This is key. Now, let's go back to Ben Gessling's tweet that right after he says at 4 hours ago, to be clear, source said it was just an injection, no second surgery. 22 minutes ago, 5:50 p.m. Central Standard Time on Wednesday. Quote, a little more context on J.J. McCarthy's procedure at the end of the day. The biological or platelet-rich plasma injection he received at TCO and Egan to reduce swelling in his knee came after an exploratory procedure to confirm there's no longer issue. Once they did that, they received the injection to reduce swelling. Just want to add those details. He technically did have a procedure, but the injection, not any surgery, was the remedy to the problem. This is probably common sense to anyone who's had this procedure done, but I thought I'd add it to give as full picture of the situation as I could. Main thing is his recovery and timetable remain on course. End quote. That tells me he had a surgery. If you have some kind of exploratory procedure done, and I asked Ben Gessling this, so if he just gave me a response because I asked him, so what was the exploratory procedure? Ultrasound, MRI, scope. His response: I know they made an incision to get in there and look at it. I'd assume they did through arthroscopic surgery, since that would be the least invasive way to get in there. I know they looked at it after an incision, determined it could be treated with PRP, and gave him the shot. So the initial reporting was correct that he did have some sort of arthroscopic surgery. So this whole process has been weird from start to finish. First, it was a surgery. Then it wasn't a surgery. And now there was an exploratory surgery to get to the treatment. The number one thing here is none of this really matters because JJ McCarthy's timetable for recovery has not changed. But that is the process today.
Well, and
I am going to send a message quick. Go ahead.
All right. But basically what it turns out he did is they put a little slit in the side of his knee, stuck in a little scope to make sure that there was nothing missed on the repair or any excess scar tissue building up, something like that, that would be causing irritation that causes the swelling. They stuck camera in there, looked around. Yeah, everything's good. Mm-hmm. Let's do what they did with me is a steroidal mix shot. Now, there may have been platelets and stuff. The orthopedic says it's a special mix, but I'm sure it's something like that. PRP, like you said, or stem cells, like you said. And they could use the player's own stem cells. It's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. And then they use the ultrasound technology. I read an article, I think this week, about how he was talking about it, how they use the ultrasound to focus the healing on it. It's advanced stuff. Mm-hmm. And put the things where it needs to be. He's going to be fine. This is just, I may have stepped on it just a little bit wrong, got a little bit swell. It's not quite, there. He'll be fine. I'm not worried.
I do want to point out that
I don't think it's going to lead to degenerative knee issues later there, Dalton.
So let's kind of talk about a couple things. We have arthroscopic surgical contacts within A to Z Sports. So I have messages out to that surgical team to try and get some more answers and more details on what this could be, how this could be caused. Basic layman's terms, when you rehab an injury, it can swell because you're basically trying to work an injured body part. Swelling can happen relatively normal. Okay. The fact that there was no damage to the injury and that his recovery timetable has not changed, I'm not worried about a degenerative knee. Now, if he would have just had the snip, the trim, then we might have had to worry about the degenerative knee. So far, we don't. I do want to point out with the response to me from Ben Gessling, he did say specifically, I'd assume they did that through arthroscopic surgery. So you don't have 100% confirmation, but the fact that he's saying I'd assume that it was arthroscopic surgery tells me that that's probably the case. Because there's very few people plugged. There's very few people that are more plugged in with the Minnesota Vikings than Ben Gessling. And it's about the only way you can get true answers on how much damage is actually in the knee, which is why whenever somebody has a meniscus injury, they say we will know more after surgery. Because sometimes it's just a tiny little piece, almost like hangnail, or a little piece of skin from your cuticle that pulls out. And then they just clip, and then you're okay. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Sometimes it's a really loose piece that you clip. Well, that can lead to other stuff because you're essentially cutting out cartilage in your knee. You don't want to remove cartilage. You want to keep as much as you can because as you get older, that cartilage is going to become more and more and more and more important. But
as it wears down with time and use, trust me, I know.
Yep. That's why do you think Dave drinks so much bourbon? He thinks it's going to rebuild his cartilage.
Yeah, I wish if that was cool, I'd have cartilage of a baby in my knees, but no, it
Odie,
doesn't.
you're fine. Odie, no barking.
And arthritis will grind it down. It's just, but he should be fine. I'm not worried about this. I suggest viewers not be worried about it. It's a real simple procedure. The orthoscopic, I've watched tons of videos when I tore mine on it. It's tiny. And it's just a little slit, it's like a 1/4 inch long, and they just shove it in there and they go in and they take a look-see and pinpoint where it is, and that's good. And as long as they don't find anything that's out of the ordinary, and it could have just been use that, he's pressing hard on his rehab, juice it up, juice the knee up. And like I said, when I tore mine, my orthopedic surgeon, that shot made it feel great. So, and it brought the swelling down. But even after, the initial stuff, it would, every couple months it would swell up and I'd just go back and get another shot and I was good.
Yeah. So I'm not really super concerned long-term about this. I really don't think we should be concerned at all, but I did find it interesting, the series of events concerning the reporting. I thought that was very interesting because it started out as, hey, there was a surgery, then no surgery, and now it's assumed to be an arthroscopic surgery that led to the injection. Now, an arthroscopic surgery is basically a scope, okay? Scopes are pretty quick. A lot of times players can have them and be back in 2 weeks. If you remember also, or they can also go horribly wrong, where you remember Sharif Floyd had a knee scope and then his career ended because they cut a nerve. Now
no,
Dave, let me talk. That's significantly rare to happen. Scopes are, it's almost like the blood test of surgeries. It's, hey, we're going to make a tiny incision. We're going to take a look, see what's going on, and we're going to close you up. And it's basically an outpatient kind of procedure. Sometimes you have to stay overnight. Like, I've had issues with anesthesia in the past. Almost every time I go under, I end up staying because they want to monitor me just in case something happens. Nothing's happened last 2 times I've been out, but you just never know. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. We're looking at a baseline procedure. Now, the Sharif Floyd thing, that's a whole different ballgame, but that was also a scope. So just something to be aware of in the whole context of what this is.
Now, generally, at least back when I had mine, which wasn't that long ago, the scope would be the camera. It would go in, do the look around, and if they had to do any work, they'd do a second slit, and then the second tool would come in, and that's got the workable head on it that would do the snipping and everything else. And I think with Sharif, that's what nicked that nerve and caused his nerve damage and ended his career, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely not fun.
But you gotta remember, who sponsors their practice facility?
TCO.
Yeah. Twin City Orthopedics. They're some of the best in the business right now. Bob saying 15-2. Way to go, Bob.
Hey, you know what? I will take that. I will take that all day long. All right. Let's kind of talk about the Tennessee Titans. This is a really weird football team. The Titans are first in yards allowed per game. They're 29th in points allowed. How in the world do you get that kind of discrepancy? Your quarterback is Will Levis, and they have been set up in such poor situations. Levis, look, if you know the meme where Levis just continues to have all these weird pictures of him just doing funky stuff. Like week 1, he was on his knees, like, oh no, where he just threw the game-ending pick 6, like stuff like that. He's got arm talent of Josh Allen and the brain of Case Keenum. He cannot link the two together to play successful football. And then he had a shoulder injury, which kept him out of multiple games. They are currently 2-7 after losing 27-17 to the Los Angeles Chargers. Once the first half was over, that game wasn't close. And that is like, this is a team that can be easily beaten. There are a lot of different factors here to kind of talk about with this team. 28th in EPA per play on offense, 20th in success rate. Now, kind of here's how that ends up looking. When you look at EPA per play, it's how many points are you generating above expect, or like your expected points added per play. Like, how good are you on a play-by-play basis? Success rate tells you if the play is successful. So you can have more successful plays, and then when you have Will Levis throwing a bozo interception, like you could get like 8, 10, 12 yards, like every single play for like 4 plays in a row. And then a pick six completely obliterates the EPA. So that's why when you want to look at both metrics, because it can give you a bigger picture, right, Odie? Yeah, Odie is a big fan of EPA. There he is. You can see my messy laundry behind, but hi, Odie.
Odie's so cute. Watch
He's
him.
a good boy. He's a very good boy. But it's looking at some of these numbers is really important for context. And Odie's like, yes, Dad, I agree. But this offense itself has been struggling a lot. Levis is 1-5 as a starter. Like, their quarterbacks have thrown 11 touchdowns and 11 interceptions over the course of the season. They are not running the ball really effectively at all. Tony Pollard has been okay. 666 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns. And their offensive line is not great. They have a lot of investment in the offensive line. First round pick last year, Peter Skoronski. First round pick this year, J.C. Latham, who's your left tackle. And then they have Nicholas Petit-Frere, who I believe was a 6th round pick a couple years ago, who might be the worst player on the offensive line in the National Football League. Like, you can beat these guys. You can pressure them. You can attack them in multiple facets. You can do a lot of different things to be able to get at this team. And I'm really intrigued to see how the Minnesota Vikings are going to accomplish that, because there is a lot of things that they can do. Dave, one of the things that I really want to focus on is I think that they're going to blitz the living daylights out of Will Levis. I think that they're not going to be particularly nice about it. And I think that they're going to...
Why should they be?
Oh, I don't think they should be. I think that they're going to be intentionally, like, they're going to intentionally try to obliterate him, because Will Levis in his career has struggled under pressure. In college, he had a near 30% pressure to sack ratio. Pressure to sack ratio is like how many sacks you get percentage wise per pressure. Okay. You want to be at 20% or less. Like 20%, it's 1 out of 5. All right. You're going to get around 15 to 20 pressures a game. 3 to 4 sacks is not a great number, but if you can stay that or less, you're in a good spot over the course of like 60 minutes. Will Levis is doing more than that. It's closer to 1 in 3 pressures leads to a sack, because he's a bozo, because he plays bozo ball. And that in itself is, ooh, buddy, it's not good.
Yeah, but you're saying Nicholas Petit-Frere is the starter? I'm showing Leroy Watson.
Okay, well, Frere has been the starter most of the year.
Okay.
If they replaced him, it's about time.
But it indicates how poorly that line's played. It's closer to Scottish Bears line than anything. Scottish Bear, I feel for you, brother.
Yeah, that Bears offensive line is, well, Dave, for lack of a better term, it's bad.
Yeah, and they just got rid of Davis today.
Well, that was one of the worst free agent signings I've seen in a long time. Like 3 years, $30 million, and the guy was never good. Oofda. And what's extra funny about that is Ryan Poles' thing was offensive line. And he continues to pick and prioritize bad offensive linemen. The Vikings, I think, did themselves a favor by saying you can't tear the franchise down and you can't fully rebuild. I think they end up making the right decision, and I think that's awesome.
I concur.
So let's kind of look at some of the things on the defensive side of the football, because I think defensively is where this Titans team is actually kind of solid. Obviously, you have Jeffrey Simmons. You have Harold Landry, who's a good football player. You have some good players on this defense, and they just traded for L'Jarius Sneed. Like, you're looking at a defense that one analyst kind of said, and I kind of agree with it. If they get a legit pass rusher, like a really, really good pass rusher, and you can have Harold Landry as like your number 2. This could be a really good defense. Starting for them, if you guys remember, I beat the drum for this guy last year. Cornerback Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is a starter for this football team. They took him in the 5th round. I can't believe he fell to the 5th round. That's going to be a humongous hit for me, especially with the way he's playing right now. Roger McCreary is your nickelback, and L'Jarius Sneed, obviously, the corner. There's some good defenders in that secondary. Amani Hooker is a really good safety. He had the game-ending interception against the Patriots 2 weeks ago. The one area where I think they can really take advantage is that linebacker core. Kenneth Murray is not a good cover linebacker, cannot flip his hips to save his life. Jack Gibbons, I know absolutely nothing about. And that's kind of like, I don't know, if I know nothing about you at this point and I cover the National Football League regularly, maybe you're not that good. I'm kind of going to lean that way. This could be another TJ Hawkinson and Josh Albert eat game, because this second level is not very good. And defensively, like, this team, well, let's kind of take a look at some of their advanced metrics. EPA per play allowed, they're 14th, so they're average. Success rate is a little bit higher than that, 6th in success rate. So they are very successful at stopping you, but they allow big plays. That's kind of what those numbers will tell you. So I'm curious if the Vikings try to run a lot of play action shots, if they want to try to attack vertically. And if they're able to do that, that could really make a huge impact on this game. If you just pepper the second level, attack vertically, and that could be a winning recipe here for the Minnesota Vikings, because like I'm not necessarily scared of the Titans defense, but I do think they're quality enough to give the Vikings some problems in a similar way to how the Jaguars were. The Jaguars defense, statistically, bad. But when you look at all 3 levels of the defense, there's some really talented players on all 3, especially that front has 2 really, really good pass rushers. That secondary has really good players across the board, and a emerging star in Tyson Campbell at corner. They all played well. They all balled out. They held the Vikings to 12 points. Some of that was on the Vikings. And we talked about that with Sam Darnold and his process, and the process being good, but the execution being poor. I think this Titans defense could present some similar problems, Dave, where there is talent on here. They drafted Tavondre Sweat in the 2nd round, and he's been really good and in stopping the run and being able to penetrate. And they don't have to play him directly as a nose tackle, and they can have him play 3 technique because you have Jeffrey Simmons next to you. That's kind of how they Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat were used at Texas, where Murphy was so good at taking on those double teams with his leverage that you could just allow Sweat to be big, and you can continue to develop him and make sure he's not just being big. Like, I'm a little worried about this game in a sense that on paper, this should be a massive win. But if there's one thing that can beat the Vikings, it's getting interior pressure and playing press coverage, man coverage with these Minnesota Vikings receivers. And Dave, it's possible that we could be seeing that a lot on Sunday.
It was pointed out that this last week that Jacksonville playing press man with the over, that Sam Darnold, when it comes to being accurate under pressure, leads the league when he's blitzed, throwing the football. And the Jaguars only blitzed him once the entire game. And then they said, well, we'll cover on the back end and let you beat us that way. And which led to the interceptions, partially led to the interceptions. And that may be copied by teams moving forward.
I will say this. I think that what's the word for it? I don't think every team can do what the Jaguars did. I think there's a blueprint, but not every team has the personnel. Not every team is going to be able to do that because it's a stylistic kind of defense. Not everybody can play a significant amount of cover 2 and cover 2 man. Like cover 2, you can just pepper corner routes and you can be able to beat it relatively easily. But when you have guys who can be extremely physical and can get in your grill and then drop into coverage and play that well, or man up one-on-one, not every team has the ability to do that, especially teams that run heavy zone. So it's a recipe that can be used to beat the Vikings. The Jets used it. The Jaguars used it. They run the significant amount of man coverage, but they have the dudes to be able to do it. Like Tyson Campbell's really good. Ronald Darby is a solid number 2. Like they're not Sauce and DJ Reed, but they're good. And because they're good players, you couldn't be able to run that kind of defense. Like not everybody can do that. And I think that's going to be huge. This Vikings offensive line has been playing really well. So now Sam Darnold will be like, okay, you see JJ doubled, go to your other reads. Pepper TJ Hawkinson, pepper Jordan Addison, and let them beat you. Remember it was 2022, the Lions game. They sold out to stop Justin Jefferson. What happened? You had huge games from KJ Osborne, from Adam Thielen. Irv Smith had a couple catches in that game too. And Osborne got that game-winning corner route. Like those are the kind of things that you're going to have to do. Those are the kind of things that you're going to need to do in order to kind of win games. And eventually, you know what? Jordan Addison starts balling out. Guess what? They're going to take a little bit of the pressure off of JJ. And then that's when you strike. That's when you identify, hey, single coverage on the outside. Go ball. Remember Randy Moss? He'd throw up the hand. Like I made a joke the other night when they played the Colts that with that play, he should just thrown up the hand like Randy Moss used to and be like, I got this. Throw me the ball. And plays didn't matter. He was like, okay, I'm just going to throw it to Moss because he's a Hall of Fame wide receiver. And I think Justin Jefferson has some of that cachet where you can just trust him to go get that football. If you have other guys taking down the defense and playing extremely well, like the run game was really good against the Jags. If you can do that against the Titans, that's going to take you to a different level. Their ability against the run is average. They're 13th against the run in EPA, and success rate, they're a little bit higher in 9th. But if you can establish the run and get Ed Ingram moving some of these guys on the interior with Garrett Bradbury and Blake Brandel, and Cam Robinson has shown a propensity to be a really physical and gifted run blocker. Like, I think you can really open up the offense for Jefferson by utilizing everybody else. And I think that's going to be a really big part of the Vikings potentially winning this football game.
I agree. And with the run, they can run to the outside if they have to, which should do well to avoid Sweat and Simmons if necessary. But I think they'll throw doubles on it where you'll get the Bradbury and Brandel and then CJ Ham and Ingram on one side type thing.
Okay.
In the middle.
Interesting. Nick P mentions in the chat that Gibbons is an animal and is the second highest rated linebacker according to PFF. Well, you know what? Okay. So it looks like they've got a good one. I genuinely know nothing about him. You know, when you cover a team, sometimes things like that can end up kind of sliding through the cracks. Like, you don't intentionally want that to happen, but you're not going to know everything about every team. And if Gibbons is really that good, yeah, he's down to third, 88.4 PFF grade so far this year. He's not really a cover, or he's not really a blitzing linebacker. He's only got 3 pressures on the year, but his missed tackle percentage is 9.8, which is pretty solid. Coverage, he's allowing just over 2/3 of his targets to be completed. So maybe that's where you exploit him. I'm going to try and watch some film later this week, and I'll kind of reference some of these things in a couple articles that I'll write for A to Z Sports. But man, I guess I was wrong in Gibbons. That's a third.
Well,
you know what?
Because you write about the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
it's 100% because I write about the Vikings. But it is only on 222 snaps, so it is a relatively small sample size. And he went to the U of M. I actually should know who this guy is, and I don't. I feel like a dummy, but that's okay. That is okay. Yeah. I'm gonna have to watch some Titans defense.
We've all been wrong before. Just ask our wives.
Oh yes, absolutely. She will tell you a lot of instances of which she believes I am wrong.
Luckily,
yeah.
I don't have to deal with that anymore. God rest her soul. But
it's a really interesting Titans team. I'm not really sure what to make of them from a overall perspective, because like having watched a couple games this year, like they just can't get out of their own way. Like Calvin Ridley's still really good, and you're gonna have to deal with him. And Will Levis has a cannon for an arm who will occasionally drop the ball perfectly in its spot, but you have to be able to take advantage of the bozo opportunities when he gives them to you. I think a lot of sim pressures, a lot of disguise is going to be the key, because Will Levis does not have good pocket presence, and they do not have the ability to give him a clean pocket.
Do you think they'll be going for a new quarterback next year? I keep reading where Sam Darnold might be one of their top priorities.
Yeah. As of right now, I wouldn't believe in any of that, because when your team is bad, you have to start speculating, and you have to start speculating to try and drive content, to try and have something to write about other than this team stinks. Because there's only so much of that fans want to read. If the Vikings were terrible and I just told you the same way they were terrible every single week, I mean, we're not going to get a ton of people watching the show. Let's just be honest with ourselves. Like, you got to have new things. You got to have new things to talk about, new things to discuss. And I think that's one of the big things here.
JD Brown asked, do you think we should look at Tannehill?
No. The Vikings should have zero interest in Tannehill whatsoever. None. Like, what would Tannehill do here? Like, you have Nick Mullins as your backup. I mean, Nick Mullins isn't good, but are you really going to want to spend like $5-6 million for Ryan Tannehill to just sit on your bench? No. And Tannehill isn't even good anymore. He had those few years when he first joined the Titans, and he played really well. What's he done since? Not a whole lot. So I would completely stay away from Ryan Tannehill.
Freedom Thinker says, didn't Will Levis have a lot of turnover issues in college?
Oh, he had a lot of them. He had a lot of pocket presence issues in college. He had a very high pressure to sack ratio in college. That hasn't changed in the NFL. Hasn't changed one bit. So, like Will Levis, he just kind of exists. He kind of exists in a plane, and that's that. He is what you got. He is a big-armed bozo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't get Will Levis. I really don't. The idea of Will Levis is good. In practicality, it's not. And yeah, like I didn't really like Will Levis coming out of that draft, if you guys remember. I had a late second round grade on him. Freedom Thinker asked why he was drafted so high. He can throw the ball like Josh Allen. He's got that kind of arm talent. The difference between him and Josh Allen is Josh Allen learned how to refine it. Thank you, Mike. That's very appreciated. Will Levis has the ability to make all the Mahomes throws, all the Josh Allen throws. The problem is he struggles at doing basic things. He struggles under pressure. He doesn't have that special kind of ability. Like Allen's great under pressure and can extend the play and make really good choices and decisions by attacking down the field and make that absolutely insane kind of throw where, hey, I'm going to whip it 50 yards down the field and I'm going to hit my guy perfectly in stride. He has that. Mahomes has that. Herbert has that. We think McCarthy might have that too. Well, Levis does. What's Mahomes great at that separates him from everybody else? He's so incredibly good at maneuvering with pressure, not panicking, and making difficult throws from all kinds of arm angles and challenging you as a defense. If you give him nothing, he will find something. Josh Allen too. Will Levis doesn't have that in him. And that's the big difference here. Will Levis does not have that. That's a special thing. Tom Brady had it too, in a different kind of way. The big thing with Tom Brady is he wasn't mobile like a traditional quarterback. He was mobile like a Dan Marino. Dan Marino, remember those top 10 lists? Like top 10 most mobile quarterbacks? Dan Marino ranked 7th on that NFL Network list because he was so good at sliding in the pocket, maneuvering in that short space, getting and creating opportunities to throw the football with open, clear windows, getting away from pressure without having to run. He was incredible at it. So was Tom Brady. So was Ben Roethlisberger. Peyton Manning was really good at it too. His was different than the other guys. He had this thing where it was almost like he was running through the ropes at all times, where his feet were constantly moving. So whenever he needed to throw, he could just like plant and fire. He just had a different way of utilizing foot mechanics, but it worked incredibly well for him and helped him have that super quick trigger that worked quickly with his intelligence. Like that's what ended up kind of making him so great. Levis doesn't have any of that. He doesn't have those intangibles. He eats mayo in his coffee. You know what? If you want to have mayo in your coffee, I really don't care. That's not really an insult, but that's what he's known for. He's not known for being a good quarterback. He's known for being the mayo boy. He's known for all the memes where he just has this incredible picture of him doing something stupid every week. He should be a good quarterback in theory because of his arm talent, because of his ability, because how he can just throw the football. The rest of it has not manifested for himself yet. And I think that is the big thing here. Will Levis can be good. He's just not. Now remember, Josh Allen wasn't really good until year 3, but he worked and he worked and he worked at the craft. And on year 3, he was one of the best quarterbacks in football. Year 3, this close to making that Super Bowl. Year 4, that was that historic game with the Chiefs where the Chiefs drove like 30 yards in 13 seconds to get that game-tying field goal. Josh Allen has something special. Levis could, but he does not.
Well, Mike said just a minute ago that Flores should be exhibiting a master class this weekend, and I agree with that. I think Brian Flores is going to scheme stuff up that's just going to mess with his mind.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's like I kind of talked about earlier. Sim pressures. Disguise. Those zero blitz looks. Hey, we're going to give you one. Like how they manipulated Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. Give him like the same blitz look twice in a row and send everybody. Then the third one, do like a zone blitz where you send a bunch of guys off of one side and then drop guys on the other. Like do all kinds of funky things. And I think if the Vikings end up doing that, oh boy, that could be a lot of fun, Dave. I'm really, really excited to kind of see how this manifests. But I'm still a little worried because the defense is legit. But as long as they're not putting bad situations with a lot of those turnovers, they've been put in bad situations. That's why they don't have a lot of yards allowed, but they have a lot of points allowed. Don't make things hard. You have to make things hard for that defense. How do you do that? Intercept Will Levis. Yeah. Gaetano's Christmas channel. Good point. Says the Titans defense is excellent. This game will truly be decided by turnovers. I do think that this game could be decided by turnovers. And if it is, well, the Vikings have a chance to win because they're in the number one team in takeaways this year. Now, Darnold has been throwing plenty of interceptions, 5 in the last 2 weeks, 10 overall this year. Only has, I believe, 2 or 3 games where he has not thrown a single interception. But I'll tell you this. I believe in the Vikings. I believe that they can do this. I believe that they can be successful. I believe that they can figure out a way to get this done. But this team is going to be really interesting to try and figure out because I genuinely do not know how this is going to end up kind of manifesting itself, how this is going to do X, Y, or Z. This is going to be a really interesting game, and I genuinely don't know how this will turn out. I think the Vikings will win, but after kind of seeing what happened last week, because of the type of team that the Jaguars are, I think the Titans are a similar type of team, especially when you have the Jaguars minus Trevor Lawrence. You have some really elite players on defense. You have a good scheme, and you have some weaknesses on offense, but there are still good players across these units. I think this could be a lot closer game than we might want to admit. And I think this is going to be like a 24-13 kind of game where the Vikings get a touchdown late to kind of gain separation. But the Titans are that annoying little pest that just stays around until you put them out of their misery. That's kind of where I'm sitting with these guys right now.
Oh, we'll find out. I think this could be close like last week, or it could be the Vikings put them down in the early first half and then it's done.
I hope it's that case. I really do. I want this game to be over quickly so I can get all my stuff done. So I can watch Bills Chiefs. Bills Chiefs at 3:25. Plus, the Grey Cup is at 5 p.m. Central Time. That will be on one of the TVs downstairs. I will be watching the Grey Cup.
Now, what I don't like about this weekend is the rest of the division plays at the exact same time we do.
That's fine. I don't care about watching those guys. I want to watch Bills Chiefs.
Well, we all do. But I like tracking and hope that team from Wisconsin gets his ass whooped. There you go, Skylar Spare. I want 2 more wins by you guys, and it's versus that team from Wisconsin. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. That'll be it for the show tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Sarah, 24. We can't even score a touchdown. Sarah.
It's 8 field goals. Like you can get to 24 with just field goals. It's okay.
We're going to get Sam Darnold back from the first 5 weeks versus the last couple. Bank on it.
I'm not really worried about Sam Darnold because the process is there. Sometimes things get a little wonky and you have a little bit of roller coaster. Even the great quarterbacks have bad games. Now, I'm not calling Sam Darnold a great quarterback, but I think he's creeping up closer to being a top half of the league quarterback. Probably sitting somewhere around 18 to 20 right now. I think that's fair. There's the higher end stuff is closer to top 10. The lower end stuff is closer to like 25. But I think that he's working his way up and starting to gain a reputation of, hey, this guy can move your offense. But you have to just be able to live with some of the bozo stuff, some of the mistakes, because he's just continuing to make them. Now, he has quite a few games here, 8 games left in the regular season, and then the playoffs in order to prove that he's being able to grow and continue to evolve. And I think that's a big thing for him right now. He's playing to make a lot of money. He's playing for $100+ million contract right now. He needs to figure it out. He's got the ability. He's got the arm talent. but you have to sync everything up. It's incredibly hard to play quarterback. Darnold's got it, but can he do it? Completely
You're
different
right
things.
about him playing for his contract, because every bad game brings down the cost. Every good game raises his contract.
I'll never forget this. Wayne Gretzky was asked who the most talented hockey player he ever saw was. It was Neil Broughton.
Okay.
If you remember Neil Broughton, he played for the Minnesota North Stars, and he was on that 1980 hockey team. But by all accounts, he never really tried. He never really cared to put work in. But was one of the most talented hockey players ever. He just didn't want it. Gretzky wasn't even like, if you want to look at like raw talent and athleticism, he was incredibly skilled, but he wasn't like gifted. Like you see a lot of these athletes come out now where they're hyper athletes and they have all these athletic gifts where they can run, they can throw, they can jump, and they're just freaks athletically. Gretzky was more of a skill guy. He wasn't huge, and he didn't have like all these elite traits, but you know what he was? He was a hard worker, and he busted his ass, and he became the best hockey player to ever live.
Like Jordan in basketball.
Yeah, exactly. You got to have something special to be great. And I think Darnold has the willingness and adaptability to kind of get to a really good level. But I'll never forget hearing Wayne Gretzky talk about that, because it just feels like a waste. Just something to keep in mind, that, you know, even if you're really talented, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on who you are.
And that goes for life.
Yeah. It's who you are as a human that will determine your fate. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you're new, welcome. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell. We do shows often, sometimes every single day of the week. Another Scolders and Spice, either Thursday or Friday. I'm not sure her schedule plan.
Thursday.
Two Old Bloggers, Dave and Darren, on Saturdays at normally 4:00, but this way you want to ring the bell. Sometimes there's a time change on Saturdays. Sometimes they'll go as early as 1, sometimes they'll go as late as 5. That's why you want to have the bell rung, because YouTube will tell you and give you a 30-minute timer when they're going to go live, and tell you when they go live on the dot. You will not want to miss that. And then Sundays, we go live at the 2-minute warning. Post-game show starts before anybody else's, and we're going to have a lot of fun talking your Minnesota Vikings. I'll be back Monday for the Real Forno Show podcast. I may have some on Saturday. Last 2 Saturdays I've recorded. I might do it again. We'll find out. I don't know. But you're going to have to subscribe to know if I do anything.
And give us feedback on the podcast. Do you like them? Do you like Vikings Daily Opener or Tyler's Saturday Extra? Do you like when I do the NFC North and I open with an epic poem? Do you like, all that sort of stuff? Does that interest you? Do you find it fascinating? Is it good? And tomorrow, when it comes to Sculptures and Spice, we're having the same guest that was scheduled last week but missed, Miss Shelby Tweeton. So it's going to be a visual treat tomorrow night.
There we go. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. Enjoy the game on Sunday. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!